Alright, welcome everyone to Sharing with Shellshock, where we have a podcast dedicated to different topics and have various guests. I'm your host, ShellshockPrime, and as you can see, we have 3 guests here who are very awesome here today. We have our topic being our love for role-playing games. So, we have ShadJV.
Hey.
We have MattBigFat.
What up?
And we have Zykrul.
How's it going?
Alright, so, our love for role-playing games, that's this week's episode of the podcast for Sharing with Shellshock. So, we are going to be talking about all things RPGs, and we are going to be getting to that in just a moment. But first, let's introduce each of them. So Shad, tell me what you do in regards to streams.
I'm ShadJV. I'm a variety streamer. I kind of do a little of everything. I've been streaming for, 5-ish years.
Mm-hmm.
Current projects I'm working on, I'm going through the first of the Zero Escape games, Majora's Mask Randomizer, and bi-weekly I've been doing Monster Hunter Rise with some of the other streamers, the Digital Bonfire, including Shell.
Yep.
Yeah, I kind of do a little of everything. I've done Pokemon streams of different kinds. I've done Ace Attorney games. I've done I did Paper Mario.
Mm-hmm.
I did Pikmin games. I No More Heroes. I'm kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
But otherwise, outside of stream, I'm a librarian is my position. So I kind of just enjoy interacting with people, and I like the community side of Twitch.
Yep. All right. Sounds good. What about you, Matt?
Oh, Pete. Well, I've been streaming for about 4 years. I'm a variety streamer. I do a lot of PlayStation, Nintendo, and PC. Of course, the love for Nintendo brought us together, Pete, when we first met 4 years ago. And because you're a good old admin of Switch and Play New York, I am a fake New Yorker. I fake being from New York, but I live very close by. For the running joke in our nice community, when everyone likes to shove it in my face. All fair. Love war. So regarding that, yes, I just do variety streams for my entire streaming career. But I like to mix in a lot of interesting vernacular. When people watch my streams, they hear things they don't hear things from other streamers, such as a lot of anime talk and a lot of culture talk. And we'll let your imagination run wild when I say the word culture.
Oh, yeah.
But yes, 4 years going strong. Keep going good. Make that content, homie. That's why I'm here. And I, of course, have a long history of JRPGs. I've loved them ever since. But I know your first question is where we started, so I'll hold that off until later.
Yes. And what about you, Zykrul?
How's it going? Yes, it's I'm planning on streaming at some point at the moment. Just looking at that. Hopefully I can get that up by the end of the month. But at the moment, when I do start, it will probably most likely be variety, but more heavily on RPGs, because that's what I focus on for a genre.
Yeah.
Yeah, and been enjoying them since ever, as a kid.
All right.
But yeah, no, we can get to that when that question arises as well.
Oh, yeah, totally. All right, so...
My God, I just realized I'm the youngest one here. Oh, my God. No.
No, it's fine.
I know.
It's fine. Okay.
I can't use the old card anymore like I do with my community.
No. It's all good. Okay, so we got some stuff to talk about today. So like we already just introduced ourselves. So now the first thing that I will ask, and I'm gonna be asking one by one. How did you get into RPGs? And for this one, I'm gonna start with you, Zykrul. How did you get into RPGs?
Oh boy. Well, that's like a 2 different questions. Because my first RPG was Adventure of Link that my mom bought for my brother and I on the NES when we were kids. But the one that really got me into the gaming is Chrono Trigger.
Chrono Trigger?
On the SNES.
Yeah, good choice.
And that really brought me into the genre, and going into the other ones that
All right.
let's see, the Chrono Trigger, and went from there because then we had a we had a Blockbuster at the time growing up.
Yeah.
So if you don't know those, this should be a rental store that we would rent. And they had quite a collection there because they would have the Final Fantasies, the Chrono Trigger. They had even it even expanded out to the as a Secret of Mana, and then when I got the it was the SNES titles opened the door, and then the PlayStation 2 opened the floodgates because I had never owned a PlayStation, but with the PS2 being backwards compatible, I was able to play both the PS2 and all of like the Final Fantasies, The Legend of Dragoon. And yeah, no, ever since growing up, it's always been upwards from there. I got into them because I enjoy story the most in content. It's partly why I get into get into them, and mostly a lot of games that are story rich. I always like to see the character developments, some characters I can relate to. It's in the journey. It's fun. It feels like even though you're playing some characters, and yes, some characters are technically supposed to be you, and you can name a character. It's still. I enjoy the fact that you can like go along the journey with them on the story.
Right, that's fair.
To what's happening.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, since the NES days, so as a child, thanks to my mom with that, but it was more with Chrono Trigger on the SNES that really got me to it, because that one it has it's unique in so many ways that that a lot of RPGs I don't want to say don't do, but it's like one of the main factors I like about it is that it really has you focus on switching characters out throughout the game. They really made us. There's some areas that you need certain characters for certain fights.
Yeah.
Unlike other RPGs where you can just pick a party and be done. You don't need to worry about the other ones. They can just be back at the inn, conversing with each other.
Yeah.
So it's just the unique elements from it, and then the time traveling, the different characters from the different eras, and learning from where they went and all that stuff, and how it all comes together. No, it is my favorite game of all time in RPG, but not just for nostalgia reasons, but for the fact of what it does for a game.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, like Chrono Trigger is definitely a game that I know that I've played before and I've beaten it. I never got the true ending, but I've got the normal ending. But I know that when I played it, like I absolutely fell in love with that game. That game was just like, to me, one of the best RPGs I've ever played, especially on the Super Nintendo. But yeah, it's just that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As someone who played it blind just for the first time, it definitely still holds up 27 years later. It does.
It aged
totally
really
does.
well.
Yeah. Like, I still think at some point it needs to be ported to consoles, because like the only modern platforms you can play it on right now are on PC and mobile.
And I do want to just make an announcement that the PC version is perfectly fine. Some people's information are out of date. The PC version is like 98% fine.
Yes.
Yep.
And I can vouch for the fact that since I watched you stream that, like you did go through the game from start to finish, and
yeah,
I'm really happy that you did.
Yeah, me too.
All right, Matt.
Square updated it. Yep.
Yep, they did. All right, Matt, your turn.
Alrighty, my turn. Alright, so my introduction to the whole JRPG genre. Alright, so my first JRPG was Pokemon Blue. I'll put age in perspective. Pokemon came out in America in 98. I was 7. So as you can tell now, I'm just 30, about to be 31. So I was 7. Pokemon Blue was my first JRPG, but it wasn't the JRPG that wanted me to experience more JRPGs. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love it. But I just didn't understand the concept of a JRPG at the time. I was young. And then my second JRPG was Paper Mario 1. Paper Mario 1, and then I was like, okay, this is fun. I'm getting down with this. I was just a Mario fan. I was just buying anything Mario at the time. So again, still understanding the concept of JRPGs, but not quite there. Then it was like FF10, and yeah, that's like a big JRPG. I didn't fully beat FF10 when I was a kid. I would eventually go on later and do it, but my friend had FF10, I had FF10, Final Fantasy 10, and yeah, now I start to get it more. That's like, okay, JRPG, I'm sort of getting it, and then the magical game that really opened the floodgate for me was Tales of Symphonia, released July 13th, 2004 for the Game Cube. Tales of Symphonia was the game that fully flooded my gates regarding JRPGs. I was enthralled by it. One, the main character, because I was a big Teen Titans fan at the time, the main character is freaking Robin, Scott Menville. Freaking, I'm like, oh, well. So I'm going all over the place. My first introduction to Tales of Symphonia was not buying it. It was actually at a friend's house, and I'm watching my friend play it. I'm like, oh man, that main guy sounds like Robin from Teen Titans. He's like, yeah, it is. I'm like, oh dang, really? Robin's there? And so I'm like, okay. And then he said, and then here's the thing that really broke the floodgates. He handed me a controller and said, "Do you want to play with me?" I'm like, "What do you mean with me? It's just turn-based." And then he gets into a battle, and it's a real-time JRPG, which is the Tales series specialty. And my mind was just blown. I was like, "Oh my goodness! You're telling me this is a JRPG where we can battle together?" As partners, and that starts two things immediately. My love of JRPGs, I will now go all out and experience them all as like a shonen anime dream. I will now go out and experience them all, and my love for the Tales series all in one fell swoop.
Yep.
And then it was already worked out because I had a Game Cube. Yes, I will talk funny like this for the entire stream. You're getting my brand of humor, Pete, if you have me on.
Of course.
I had a Game Cube and a PS2, so it all worked out. I was able to experience JRPG galore. I just didn't know it I just didn't know I wanted it at the time, and now I did. And so then I'm like, I go out and experience all the JRPGs I can. Moving on to a few more. After Tales of Symphonia, I moved on to another Namco great hit, which I'd bring back, Baten Kaitos, which was a turn-based JRPG. That was great by them. They're made by Namco themselves. Again, Namco would become one of my favorite companies. Yeah. They make great freaking games. So yeah, I would eventually go on to play Baten Kaitos, more Final Fantasy, and even some like lesser known games like Arc the Lad was a really good JRPG on the PS2.
Yeah.
And just Twilight of the Spirits, you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
I know it debuted on like PS1, but I'm specifically talking about Twilight of the Spirits for PS2.
Oh no, I did not do Twilight of the Spirit. No, I did the Black collection.
I never went back and played the old ones, but yeah. But anyway, I would go on to just experience both young and old JRPGs at the time, and forevermore.
Yep. Yeah. So
right.
Shad. All right. So Shad. What about you? What's your experience?
So, being the ripe old age of 33 and having started gaming when I was the ripe young age of 2, but getting my first gaming console when I was 5, I actually, weirdly enough, a lot of my early games, I don't even remember what they are. I every so often unlock a memory of a game I didn't know that I played, and then I see it and like, wow, oh, I remember this. But the first memory I have of an RPG is probably Super Mario RPG, which I remember getting on the Super Nintendo. I feel like I probably played some games with RPG elements before that because I remember not being completely like caught off guard by like leveling mechanics and stuff. But at the same time, it was something clicked with me there. Because I was very young and I did not have a way to make money or buy my own games, but we had Blockbuster and some other rental places near us. I would go on to rent Super Mario RPG probably dozens of times, usually having to start over every time because
So delete your file.
sometimes if I'm lucky, I was able to get renew my same thing, but my file's there. But yeah, so that's my first big memory. I did go on to actually right before the Super Nintendo's end of its life. I managed to get a used copy of Super Mario RPG as a gift for my parents, and it's a very cherished piece of my childhood because of that. But my second real RPG then was probably the Pokemon games, which I remember right at the start of the huge Pokemon craze. The trading cards, the games, the anime, it was everywhere. And I remember I had an old Game Boy, the brick, and I ended up, I think it was Pokemon Blue was the first Pokemon game. I saved up for it, saved up allowances and stuff, and bought Pokemon Blue. And I was so hooked on it, I ended up going on to all my next future allowance saving was to buy Pokemon Red, and then Pokemon Yellow, and then Pokemon Gold. I just kept going for all the Pokemon games. I was hooked on it. And that's from my love of Pokemon, in addition to my love of RPGs. I don't think I still fully understood, as Matt said, the concept of an RPG yet. And I think I wouldn't until Golden Sun on the Game Boy Advance. The Game Boy Advance is where I really got into RPGs. There were so many RPGs on the Game Boy Advance.
Mm-hmm.
And Golden Sun is the first one I played, and I felt like this is it. This is the most RPG of RPGs I could get to. There's
that one really pushed the envelope for the GBA.
It's a good game.
Along with games like Final Fantasy, it's the heaviest of an RPG. If somebody asked me to think of an RPG, Golden Sun's the first thing that pops in my head.
The lag in the game is a feature.
Other than that, I like I said, I got a lot of Game Boy Advance RPGs. Consoles, unfortunately, I was exclusively Nintendo consoles because I was only allowed to have one console per generation due to my family's money and stuff. And so N64 gave me the amazing options of Paper Mario and Quest 64. I owned one of them. I rented the other one a few times. You can probably guess which is which.
Well, normally I don't play sound effects on this, but I do have one sound effect that I'm going to play in regards to Quest 64. So anyone in chat can hear it.
Yeah. I will say, when I first played Quest 64, I didn't have a ton of experience with RPGs, so I still didn't have a gauge to be like, this is awful. I didn't love it. I never wanted to buy it, but to this day, I feel Quest 64. Sorry. I feel like Quest 64 is not a bad game. It's just not a good game. It's as middle of the road as you can get, and that's almost the bigger flaw. It's just it's a boring game.
Right.
But I know what you mean.
Yeah. Overall, ended up that was the bulk of it. From there on, I just got more and more into it. I obviously I had the what do you call it? Game Cube?
Yeah. The Game Cube.
I had that too. I had the Tales of Symphonia. I had the
Paper Mario 2.
Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles. I had the Phantasy Star Online Episode 1 and 2. I had
good game.
Bait and Katos. I had. I didn't get Skies of Arcadia. That was one of the only ones I missed that I wish
that's one I skipped over too. It was just the underground game that I never knew about.
Yeah, someday I have to play it. Yeah. But I even had some of the more obscure stuff Lost Kingdoms. If any of you remember that game,
as a Yu-Gi-Oh fan, I do know Lost Kingdoms.
I loved that game. I had both of the games of that. Those are some of the earliest From Software games that were nothing like a Souls game.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, that's generally my experience. I fell in love with RPGs because there's so much variety from live action action based, turn based, everything in between. So RPGs can feel so different, yet at the same time, there's just some like expectations. You can, when you face something hard, you can be like, okay, I can just go get up some levels. You get to learn these battle systems that tend to have some depth to them and are rewarding once you learn them. Like, it's not, to me, it's just not a game that you just mash a button through or that you just do precise timings of buttons. You actually learn mechanics, and not to mention the stories, the lore, the characters. It's an anime you can play, at least the JRPGs.
Yep.
And
The
it's not
Western
even just
RPGs are...
and it's not just a battle mechanic. Each game even will go further into their own unique style. Like Final Fantasy, for instance, each one has their own limit breaks that's unique to each title. Like with Final Fantasy X, you have the overdrives, where each one does its own abilities. Where like Lulu will do double magic, or Yuna's will fill up the gauge for the summons, or you have Final Fantasy IX for the chants.
Some of my favorite things in RPGs are when different characters have their own mechanics. Like, that's why Final Fantasy VI to this day is my favorite Final Fantasy game I played. I love that each character works so differently.
That's such a huge cast too.
Mm-hmm.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's a character
I don't mean that in a
where
bad way. I just mean
We know.
I never thankfully you never are expected to bench the entire cast. You're actually expected to have leveled them up evenly, but like, I never wanted to bench the entire cast. I liked all their different play styles. But yeah.
right.
Yep.
So that's a lot of my early RPG journey.
All right. Sounds good.
Yeah, see, I didn't learn that with six. Like six, like you said, Chrono Trigger and all them, I was new. When I got into six, I couldn't beat the game because that was the first game where, because like throughout the entire game, it didn't really. Like, there were some points that it did split up the teams, but for the most part, you were just able to keep the same team.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a team that I liked. I don't remember what it was because it's been so many years. But the issue is that the final area, with the point of no return, requires you to use all the characters. So I only had like 1/3 of level for that area, where the other ones were 2 under level. I couldn't advance because I couldn't go back because I'd saved, and I couldn't advance because even if I split up the team that was normal, they were too weak. I mean, they wouldn't be able to carry the rest of the team. So I was unfortunately unable to beat it at the time then for that. But that was a lesson learned of, yes, I have to switch out characters even if I don't prefer them as a main.
Yep. All right. So for me, in regards to where I started, like how I got into JRPGs, or rather RPGs in general, for me, like I grew up with an NES. Like I was like 3 years old, about to be 4 in 1990. I was around right now I'm like 35, but back then it's like I didn't really know what an RPG was when I was young. Like I had so many games that I played of different genres, but RPGs, unfortunately, were not one of them. I didn't get into RPGs until later. Like not even on the Sega Genesis. For Super Nintendo, I didn't get into it until later on. The first RPG that I actually remember playing is actually Pokemon.
I think it's true for a lot of people.
Yeah,
Pretty much, yeah.
for me, like Pokemon was the one because I got into Pokemon because of like the anime. My brother was watching the anime, and the episode that I remember watching was the one where it was the second episode where they were in Viridian City and they needed to go to the Pokemon Center. But the one that actually got me into Pokemon was the one where they were in the Viridian Forest, and Ash caught the Caterpie and the Pidgeotto in that episode, and then that battle against Team Rocket, and I've been hooked ever since. So naturally, the anime would get me into the video games, because I remember when I was in school, I've seen someone play Pokemon, and I was watching it. It looked pretty cool, and then I had to wait until New Year's Eve of, like, not even Christmas, but New Year's Eve, 1998, to get myself a Game Boy Pocket, and we were only able to afford one, and we got Blue first, so which is my brother's game, so we had to share, and I started out with Squirtle.
Mm-hmm.
But
I feel good job, homie.
Yes, and then like after that, it's like I got into that. Then the Game Boy Pocket broke, so we got a Game Boy.
Oh.
So we saved up for a Game Boy Color. It got stolen, and then we got and then months later we got another Game Boy Color. It was the Atomic Purple one with Pokemon Red, and then about 2 months later, that Game Boy Color that was stolen, I got it back. And so it worked out because since I got it back, then my mom got us a link cable so that my brother and I could trade, so we can get all 150 Pokemon. And for whatever reason, my brother managed to get the 151st Pokemon, Mew.
Yeah.
And then after that, like, the rest is history. The problem is the life cycle for the save file batteries for Game Boy are finite. They're like they will automatically randomly just like corrupt, and then you will get a message that says the file save has been destroyed or erased, and then you automatically have to start the game all over again.
Problem with cartridges, internal batteries.
Yes, not fun. Though it got better later on with Game Boy Advance. Like Game Boy Color had the same issue. Game Boy Advance, they fixed that, but first RPG that wasn't Pokemon for me. Well, I remember playing. Well, let's see. Yeah, it actually was Earthbound on Super Nintendo, because I first heard of Earthbound back in like '95. Like, because I actually had a Game Informer subscription from like the summer of '94 to the early summer of '95, and the last issue that I got from the subscription featured Earthbound. I thought it looked pretty cool because it was like, you would see RPGs at the time, because like at the time I kind of knew what RPGs were because I saw like Final Fantasy, like the medieval like settings. Although 6, they ended up going the extra mile, adding more like magic tech and all that stuff. But Earthbound was different because it was an RPG in a modern day setting of the 90s. Like, you would have like a kid with a baseball bat and having psychic powers, having to meet 3 other people with different abilities just to go and fight this alien like creature. And when I first got and then it's like the last time, and then the next time I've heard about Earthbound was Super Smash Bros. For the 64, because of Ness being playable in the game. And what happened is it got to the point where like I want to play this game, and quite frankly, I did. And I did play the game in 2001 because that's when I got the cartridge on my Super Nintendo. My mom got it for me. It was supposed to be a Christmas present. Like, I was supposed to wait till Christmas, but my mom let me have it early because I actually really wanted this game. I was actually
and you built up good boy points. Maybe you did some chores or something too.
Well, it's not that simple. It's more the fact that I was actually going through a very rough point in my life, like a lot of bullying and a lot of like harassment from like all the bullies in school. And the school.
I do remember you saying that Earthbound was your comfort game.
It was my comfort game because like with all the bad stuff that was going on in school at the time, Earthbound really got me through it, and I'm really glad because it actually did shape my own personal like taste in video games later on, because that was the moment where I really loved video games more than ever, and Earthbound like it helps that Earthbound is also like a really great game, like great sense of humor, great cast of characters, great setting compared to like Final Fantasy and all that, or Dragon Quest and all that stuff.
Its setting is one of its biggest positives for me too. I will concur.
Yes. Yeah. And speaking of Dragon Quest, I actually used to have Dragon Quest 1 and 2 on the Game Boy Color, but the battery issue is so bad. Like, I think I was actually getting close to beating the game, and then all of a sudden, save data got destroyed. Like, I think I was closer to beating Dragon Quest 2 more so than 1, but I'll get back to those games in the future. I'll have to do both of them as well as Dragon Quest 3. But unfortunately, like, the sad part is that, like, the battery just didn't want to work, because that's the problem with Game Boy Color batteries. First home console RPG that was 3D for me was Final Fantasy 9. I did not play 7.
Yes.
Yeah, I did not play 7 until much later, but 9, it was my first Final Fantasy. And it was actually a really good one. Though I didn't beat it back then. I have since beat it much later on, like when the remaster came out on Switch 3 years ago. But I remember making it to disc 3 and I was stuck. I don't remember exactly what part was I stuck on. But when I played the game years ago, like I was just playing, I didn't stream it, but I will actually stream it. But I played it on my own because I really wanted to get that out of the way. And when I did, it turns out like all I needed to do was just like level up my characters just fine. I think I might have been underleveled, and that I was hitting a wall with some of the enemies, ended up like being super powerful. I too own Phantasy Star Online Episode 1 and 2 on the GameCube, or Game Cube is what Matt likes to call it. So I had that. I wasn't the biggest fan of the series, mainly due to the fact that I kind of held a grudge to the game, and I'm going to tell you why. So there was a time where like we were playing the game and the game froze, and then guess what happened? All save data, like every save data in that memory card that it was in, corrupted.
Yeah, I had a number of GameCube memory cards just corrupted.
Yeah.
Wait, really? That's a thing?
That is a thing.
I guess I better count my blessings. No, mine's still working this very day.
That sucks.
Yeah.
All right, God. Count my blessings.
Yeah,
cool.
Phantasy Star Online really fucked up my shit. It really did. It completely screwed up the memory card. Like, and luckily for me, I had another memory card that had like other games. Like Smash was not one of those games that got corrupted. But I had like a secondary Animal Crossing town that unfortunately was lost. Not my first town, but like a backup town, which because the memory card that got corrupted was the 256 one. Because we got that Mario Party 4 and Phantasy Star Online at the same day, and my brother was the one who was more into the Phantasy Star games. So the Phantasy Star Online, he was more into that. Did I have any other RPGs on GameCube? I don't think I did when I was a teenager. But for PS2, my brother was I watched my brother play Legend of Legaia on PS1. He enjoyed that game, and he was playing the sequel to that. I tried to get into Golden Sun, but it just ended up like I've attempted to play Golden Sun many times, and it just never seemed to work out. I may have to attempt it someday, but it just never worked.
For me and Shad's sake, I hope you do.
Yeah, same.
Earthbound was one of those games that didn't work out for me the first time I played, and then eventually I did come to like it.
What did work out?
Earthbound, I never even got a chance to try it until it got re-released on Virtual Console. That was my first experience.
Yeah. What did work for me was I still play Pokemon. Even in that era, like when Ruby and Sapphire came out, I played it.
Ruby and Sapphire was so good,
man. But Emerald made it even better with like so much content.
The later versions of every gen always end up being better, except for maybe arguably Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. But that's a whole different discussion.
Yeah,
that is. Yeah,
there were other RPGs that I've actually wanted to play, and then I did try playing, but then like I got distracted for one reason or another. I tried playing Final Fantasy IV on the Super Nintendo, and I could never finish it. I'll have to go back to it at some point. I think the only other character that I actually ended up getting was the little girl Rydia.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with the green hair. Yeah.
Yep, that's her.
Ironically enough, I know someone who goes by that name and loves that character too. But yeah, shout outs to one of my friends, Rydia, aka Miss Silver. No relation to Silverstone, by the way. Anyway, so the other thing is, like, it got to the point where later in my life I started to appreciate RPGs more and more. Like, I got Final Fantasy 3, not Final Fantasy 6 on Super Nintendo, but Final Fantasy 3, which was the remake of the original Famicom game on the DS, because we never got that game here until, like, when the DS version came out. I gotta finish that at some point. I'll stream it at some point. I actually have a ton of RPGs, many of which are in my backlog, and I have to get through them. Like, I did play all 3 of the Xenoblade games that came out, 1, 2, and X. I still got to do Torna. But I did.
You gotta do Torna. Torna's really great.
Yes.
I still need to do 2 and Torna.
Yeah. Xenoblade 1 was the only one I streamed. I've only streamed the remake. I played 2 and I played X. Like, X was the first one I've actually beaten on the Wii U. And, like, I will say, though, that all 3 games are great, but I think that the best one, in my opinion, is Xenoblade Chronicles, the original.
I agree.
Oh, I'll get into that when we get to the next question.
2, like, the problem with that, like, I have some problems with that. The main problem is, like, kind of like the gacha system in a way, with, like, the characters, like, some of the blades you get, and also, some characters I find interesting, like, the designs are great, and then there's some that are not great at all. And then, like, one of my favorite characters ended up just fucking, like, kick the bucket. But other RPGs, Octopath Traveler, love that game. I also finally played Final Fantasy VII in 2019 when it came out on Switch. And what pushed me to do Final Fantasy VII was when I was doing the Alphabet Challenge, and I had 2 Final Fantasy games on there and 2 Fire Emblem games on there. I had Fire Emblem Path of Radiance and Fire Emblem Warriors, and then I had Final Fantasy 6 and 7. Naturally, Final Fantasy 7 won because it's the most popular one in the series. So that one, and I ended up going through that, and it's as good as people say it is. But is it the best game ever made? No.
I still don't think it's the best Final Fantasy game. I like 6 more.
But it's a great game.
I like 4
great.
more, so yeah. Yeah, 7's fine. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
It is revolutionary for a reason.
But what really made me love RPGs was Chrono Trigger. When I first played it, like, it was 2014, I played it, and oh my god. To me, I feel the battle system in that game is better than most Final Fantasy games. And also, not only that, but the characters are interesting, the plot, and also, like, the theme, which is basically traveling through different time periods, like time traveling. I love time traveling. Hence the fact that
who doesn't like a good time travel plot?
I know, right?
Hence the fact that some of my favorite movies of all time are the entire Back to the Future series. So naturally, time travel is something I absolutely love.
Great Scott, Pete.
Doctor Who fan here.
Great Scott.
Yeah,
I know this is heavy.
Yeah, but yeah, like Chrono Trigger, absolutely love it. It's incredible. Eventually, I will get to Radical Dreamers, which is not exactly an RPG. It's like a visual novel. I'll get to that.
Visual novel, yeah.
And,
it's short, but it's still good.
And then I'll get to Chrono Cross. Oh yeah, Dragon brought up Live Alive, which, here's the thing about that game. It's a game that I've been wanting to play for so many years, the moment I heard about it and heard of the type of game it is. Different time periods, different characters, different settings. Like, you could either be in a feudal Japan, you could either be like in a Western and whatnot. Cool idea, cool concept.
Live Alive, actually, I hadn't even heard of before the Direct that it was announced, and it was one of those weird situations where it was like everybody knew about me, and I was like, did I just come from a different timeline that, like, this game didn't exist.
I mean,
because but I'm super interested. I'm getting it day one.
To be fair, it was only in Japan, so hopefully it does well so that we get the other Japanese only RPG that was on the Super Famicom, Bahamut Lagoon, which has the distinction of being the last Square game on a Nintendo platform until like 2003, which was Final Fantasy Tactics Advance. So 7 years, like from 96 to 2003, like not putting a game on a Nintendo platform. That's actually wild. But so yeah, like, and RPGs in general, like, there's still more for me to play. Like, again, backlog, and also have to make sure to make time for as many of them as possible, which Tokyo Mirage Sessions is happening soon, in a few weeks. But yeah, I absolutely love how RPGs go, but I will say I will eventually have to dive deep into playing Western RPGs. That's something I have to do at some point. I haven't really done that yet. Only Japanese RPGs, but Western RPGs, I will actually get to that soon. Which, now let's get to the next topic. So, the next topic is, what are some of your favorite RPGs of all time? And we're going to start this one off with you, Matt.
Alrighty, here we go. Alright, let me just reach over and grab the Joker Amiibo. Let's go. Alright, so my two favorite JRPG of all time is a tie between Tales of Xillia, which I think is the best Tales game, and Persona 5, which is a more recent JRPG, but really impressed me. That game, here we go, I'll show the Joker Amiibo on camera. That game, which I waited at a GameStop at 10 a.m. to get. Also my Smash main. So Persona 5, boy, have you guys heard of that game before? I don't think anyone has. Yeah, it's been talked about to death for the last 5 years.
No, I've never heard of Persona 5. It's probably some indie game I've never heard of.
Probably some low
indie
game.
Some connection to Shin Megami Tensei 5?
Nah, not at all. You're crazy. So obviously that game's been talked to death for the last 5 years, but in my great opinion, because I have such high standards when it comes to JRPG, it deserves it. It honestly deserves it. It deserves to be talked about as much as it does. It's revolution. It's the platinum standard now for the diamond standard now for JRPGs. It's just a phenomenal game. It does everything right. Style, substance, decently good. It's not perfect writing, but great writing, great music. The music's played live on stage. Lynn, I forget her last name. Even herself had a performance during the 2020 Game Awards, singing "Last Surprise." It's just revolutionary. That entire IP is talked about for 5 years now for a good reason. And Persona 5, I'm going to bring up this little minor topic too. Persona 5 does something that a lot of other JRPGs really stumble with. It made a direct sequel that upholds full quality. So I'm not going to want to go on a huge tangent about this, but I'm going to copy a good old Sonic YouTuber line. You know how Sonic's always had a rough transition into 3D? JRPGs have always had a rough transition in making direct sequels themselves. And when I say direct sequels, I mean starring the exact same characters in a sequel setting. Not just like a Xenoblade 2 where it stars like same characters and same like mythos or whatever. JRPGs have always struggled with having characters in the same exact setting in a sequel, because how do you build off a gameplay progression where they've taken down God or some really strong enemy last time? How do you build off a gameplay progression like that?
Tales of Symphonia 2.
Alright, now listen, I actually don't mind Tales of Symphonia 2 as much as the next guy. I actually stand up for that game. But even Xillia 2 suffers, even Xillia 2 takes a few stumbles too in its sequel. Because Xillia 2 and Tales of Symphonia 2 are two games in the Tales series, which I love, that star the same main characters from the previous game, and even they don't get it 100% right. But Persona 5 has a sequel, Persona 5 Strikers, and boy does it nail using the same main characters again. I just couldn't believe it. Persona 5 actually can't do any wrong. That's why it's goddamn talked about for 5 years now. Anyway, yeah, so Persona 5 is my favorite JRPG of all time, tied with Tales of Xillia. And Tales of Xillia, going on to Tales of Xillia, so I've been a Tales fan ever since I fell in love with Symphonia, and that was the gateway JRPG and all that. And I just think Xillia has the absolute best made battle system with the absolute best character writing. I love the main character Jude to death. I even have a Nendroid of him right here sitting on my desk. right near Joker, along the lines of the amiibo and all that. And I have a poster of him back behind my cabinet, but my cabinet blocks it. But yes, the phenomenal writing, the phenomenal voice acting, the phenomenal battle system, which is still the best Tales battle system in my opinion, and all that, and just made me fall in love with Exilia. And Namco would go on to change the battle system a little and do some other things with that series, but Exilia will always be my number one favorite. So those two JRPGs are pretty much tied for my favorite of all time. I can talk about them on hours on end, as you see me flapping my gums right now.
Yep.
I mean, of course, I love a ton of other JRPGs. Like Paper Mario's always been close to me. I've hit a handful of my Final Fantasies. Looking over my shelf now, yeah. All that good stuff.
Shame we haven't gotten another Paper Mario since Thousand Year Door.
Oh boy, that's the good old can of worms, ain't it? Freaking Shad, ain't it? I mean, again, I can go on to talk about how I feel about Paper Mario, but yes, Paper Mario Thousand Year Door being a phenomenal JRPG and all that. And yeah, and also I'm huge. I never really mentioned this back in my introduction, but I'm hugely into Fire Emblem. So yeah, I would go on to play a lot of Fire Emblem 2 after I was done indulging in Tales of Symphonia. I finally got to play the game that was marketed to us in the West, or almost not. They almost took Roy and Martha to Smash in the West. Boy, imagine that. But yes, I would eventually go on to play Fire Emblem, and Golden Sun would be one of my first few games after my Tales of Symphonia craze also. So I would just dive into those. And even, I forgot to mention, Chrono Cross was actually one of the first few games I played after my Symphonia craze too. That's why I'm a long-standing Cross fan who finally played Trigger for the first time. So those are like the appetizer JRPGs that, of course, I love to always mention amongst JRPG crowds. But yes, to cap it off one more time, Persona 5 and Tales of Earthbound are my all-time favorite JRPGs. I can play those games hours on end, no matter how many playthroughs. And you know what? The Persona 5 2, the sequel, can also get like on the top 5 list there too. Exilia 2 isn't half bad, but it's just not as well made as Persona 5 2 Strikers, AK.
Yeah.
So there we go.
Yep.
Whew.
Well, those are Matt's favorite RPGs. So, Zykrul, your turn.
Oh, I have a list.
Go on.
Besides Chrono Trigger being my all-time, I have... I didn't even think of doing a list because I have so many. And it's not just for story; it's more because of the unique mechanics they have in each game. Let's see, I'll have to go by system. It's the only way I'll remember them. It's like for the SNES, it would be, of course, Chrono Trigger. It would be which not many played, although there was the remaster or the remake of which is Secret of Mana, as a lot of you know, as Trials of Mana. One of the earliest to do a real-time-esque battle system with its supposed turn-based. Then there was the let's see, PlayStation. There's just way so many FF9. Definitely, that's my let's get to it's like my top 3 for now. In part of nostalgia, a lot of it's story based, is Chrono Trigger 9 and 10. Final Fantasy 9, Final Fantasy 10.
Yes.
All
right.
And the issue again, just back in the day, Square just knew how to make stories, how to make RPGs back in the 90s and early aughts. And it's not to say that they don't now, because we have Octopath Traveler and such, but it's pretty much thanks to Squaresoft that I grew up into RPGs. Some of my other favorites is The Bouncer on the PlayStation 2.
Oh yeah, that game, which has Proto Sora in that.
Yeah, Scion as the main character for that one, and you could tell the art style is similar to other ones because it's but the unique system with that one is that every time you completed the game, it would get more difficult. So it was, which was interesting because throughout the entire game, you could choose which character to play as at each like chapter point. The issue with that one though is that if you did that, you would be spreading them out evenly per se, but yet they didn't count for they made the difficulty spike in a way that they expected you to just play one character. Because if you did them evenly, it made it a little bit more difficult on the other playthroughs. So you do each one, because even if you did one all the way through, if you went back, the other ones would be back at like level 1 because you never played them, but the difficulty went up, so it made it difficult for them. It's a really short game, even with playing through each of the 3 stories of the characters. That one's a lot of fun.
Yeah, if I may interject real quick, I want to just talk real quick about the bouncer for 2 things. One, the art style, because the artist is Tetsuya Nomura, he did the art. That's why the main character looks a lot like a prototype version of Sora, in a way, like same color scheme and everything. And the other thing is, the company that developed the game, Dream Factory, they made a couple of fighting games with Square, like the Toe Ball games, as well as Guys, God Bless the Ring. Yes. Those games. But yeah, continue, Zykrul.
Sure. It's and then from there I went to GameCube. I don't think I played many on the GameCube. Skies of Arcadia Legends, which was originally released for the Dreamcast, as just Skies of Arcadia, had a overhaul that included extra story content that was not in the original. But that had a interesting combat system where it went by. It's sort of like they all shared a stamina bar, and the amount of depending on the attack that you use, it would either deplete it or you could fill up the bar to do more powerful damage to the enemy, which was an interesting system to have. But what I liked about it was it's 2 combat systems in it. You would face the enemy on foot with the characters with that, and then they had was for my first time a you would have airship combat with your ships, and you would pick out the your layout of what you want to attack with, but it would also show you at the same time what the enemy would be doing as well, so you could combat with that. And it's not that difficult of a system. It worked quite well and smoothly. And it's just and what's neat about it is that it'll even like during mid-combat, it will ask what to do. Like, should you flank them like from a certain way or not? And if you guess wrong, you are going to get hurt severely. And it's it is quite the punishment. But they fix a lot of things with Legends where you don't get being a what I just know it. The combat is with enemies where they randomly pop up, and what they fixed from that with Dreamcast is that they lowered the rates of combat, but they upped the XP as well, and to have a flow a lot better. I've gone back to that one twice. That one I would definitely go back to again. I can't think of any other GameCube ones because I think. Because I've done. Let me see. I'm just going off. From there, I would say.
Definitely let me know what other games.
Yeah, the other one I haven't gone through the entire series, even though they're still working on translations, is the Legend of Heroes. I've completed Trails in the Skies, first 3. I've not done Cold Steel yet, because they do because there's another series that hasn't been translated yet that they spoil the story, which is fine because it's the way the canon lore works, and I don't want to get spoiled for that. But
Right.
it's in the process of being translated. But it's just this huge, massive world. Even though it's and that's what I love about it is that it's different characters in the series, but it all takes place in one world. There's 3 different regions that takes place. You start in with trails. You start in one region. You deal with all that stuff there. Cold Seal. It's a little bit of that, but in a new area. That one is the longest with 4 games. Even though the creator said that he would not make it that long again, he'd probably stick with 2 or 3 when it comes to the future. Because he has like this whole road, this like list that he's wants to do to tell a story. That one has great music. The combat system is just simple turn-based. You choose your move. The weaker it is, the quicker you have to attack again. The stronger it is, the you might have to wait a little bit longer. And from there, I then went to and I only learned of it because of Project Rainfall, the last story, and
Pandora's Tower.
Yeah.
In Pandora's Tower, I don't know if that would really be an RPG, but also Xenoblade Chronicles was from that. And
that's Xenoblade, yeah.
And Xenoblade is, I don't know. I'm like in the same boat as Matt for Persona as I am for Xenoblade, because the storytelling, the open world, it's like an offline MMO. It's just the whole map is all connected. It's so huge and massive, and it's like you start off in this small town. Things happen, and you have to go out and explore to find your friend that went missing and figure out what's going on. And like they do, it's like the camera shots and everything is just beautiful. It's like the moment you get out into the first area on the Guard Plains, it's that it just pans out. It shows how massive, how open it is. It's like it's not overwhelming. You think it would be, but it's not. It just shows this is what you'll be exploring. What you see in the background is just not a rendered image. You'll be able to explore that. You'll be able to go there. You'll be able to see what's over there. And one of the things I like about it is that as you explore the area is mixed of enemies with levels of all kinds. Even though you may be there at around level 10 to 12, you'll see enemies in the 80s and 90s as like a hint, knowing you'll be back here at some point to combat these enemies. And it's like, jeez, like you're already seeing 60, 70 levels ahead of what they expect you to do, even though you have just started. That is one of the few I have completed 100% once on the Wii, and then again on the Switch with the definitive edition.
Yeah.
Then actually, Skies of Arcadia is the other one too. I still haven't. I still need to get into 2 because I haven't gotten that yet. But yeah, no, though story-wise and stuff, those are my favorites. Even like back to Tales, like with Matt Zilia. That's the first one that got me into the series, and the characters and the storytelling with Jude and Mila Maxwell and Rowan and Elvin. It's really well told, and actually that was the first. I don't want to say first game, and this is the first game I remember where you had a choice. So what's interesting with that game is that you can either start the game as either Jude or as Mila Maxwell. So it's it's so you would see this, so you see the story being told behind one of them, and you really need to play both to see the full story of what's going on.
He is correct.
And I found that quite interesting. I was like, oh, so it's like you go through. It's like, okay, I play as you, like, what is going on here? And then like play the other side, like, oh, that is what. They just do it so well. It's not like this. It's not like there's like any like what's going. It's not. I can't even say plot holes because there aren't any plot holes. You may think there are, but there's not because they're all explained in the other person's story. When you play through both, and I was like, that is just amazing. And so like when I played as Jude first, and then I went through Mila, I was like, okay, I know all this. Like, oh, that's why this, and okay, and it's just that was that I quite enjoyed with that combat, but with the storytelling, and then I just finished. Which I'll probably play through again, because again, Persona 5 Royale. Because again, like Matt said, it's the storytelling, the pacing. There are a few hiccups there is for me, and it seems like it's universal or at least it's like a well-known thing for a lot of people. There is like one chapter that's could have been written better. But overall, they do enough to where they lay out enough info for you to read, but not enough to spoil it, and it's enough to where that you know about it, but yet you'll forget about it, and when you go back to it, and then when you progress to the story, they go back to it, and it's like one of those like, oh, frick moments, like. Wow, I was like, you knew this, but yet it just didn't click. And like, I love games that do that. And
yes, if I may slightly interject, yes, I agree with ZY. One of JRPG's best aspects is that they have such good writing, they can foreshadow events, and it has replay values. And when you go back and revisit the story again, you're like, oh, so that's it. I see.
Look, for instance, I won't say what, but like I like. For the first half hour, I replayed through Persona 5 beginning just to check because I was checking something else in it, and
you see story foreshadowing,
and you see story foreshadowing because like because when you introduce to as a character, you start at this new school and you're introduced to your teacher, and she hands you an item to take with you, and along with it is an item that she looks down shockingly, grabs it to take it away. I was like, oh, I know what that relates to now, which I didn't think. It's like, I just love games that do that. Is that it's just that they sprinkle little like breadcrumb-like things. It's like, oh, you think that detail's nothing? When you play through it again, it's like, oh. Yeah, I'm definitely going to play
storytelling. I love it.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to play through Royale again, just to see what it's a game where I always say where it's like reading what I always say a good storytelling does is that you are walking down a dark hallway and you are turning on the light switches, and the light switches are like the important details you're reading to make sure you don't trip yourself up to reach the end of the hallway. And then as you reach the end of the hallway and you want to go and you need to go back to the hallway again, you don't need to worry about the lights now because all the lights are on. So as you're going back, you're seeing all the little details you may have missed during the first time going down that connects to everything else that's the big picture.
That's a pretty damn good analogy.
Yep.
Yeah. I definitely would recommend Royale. I just started with Strikers.
Sequel! The good sequel!
As the company says, spin-off, but yeah, no.
I know.
No.
It's a sequel, but oh god, naming conventions with companies, man.
Yeah.
But anyway.
But anyway, the ones that I said are like basically my favorite that that I will go back to because of story, gameplay, and actually, you know what I meant to say with
What's up?
Skies of Arcadia is the fact that one of the voice actors who plays a creepy, like really creepy, misogynistic character, Vigoro. He is, which I didn't know until years later. He is voiced by, I'm gonna mispronounce his name.
Is it the voice actor I'm thinking of?
Mario. No. It's voiced. It's. I mean, I want to say it's voiced by the guy that voices Mario Luigi.
Oh, Charles Martinet. Yeah.
You mean Charles Martinet?
Charles Martinet. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That was one of his extra voice acting roles. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and another one that he does so well, not in RPG, but he does the homunculus in Shadows of Memory, Shadows of Destiny, which sounds nothing like other characters. I was flabbergasted when I saw him in the credits there. I was like, really? But yeah, those tend to be my favorites. Those tend to be the ones I go back to. I'm trying to think what other games that I like that had the mechanics that aren't bad. I would probably say it was an interesting one. And again, I'm a sucker. It was my first one, Bravely Default. It was my first one doing a job system, and I think that's like one of my favorite battle mechanics is the job system. Like Octopath Traveler has as well.
Yeah.
That one had a unique way of telling a story. Sadly, the story also works with the 3DS, so if they ever release it again on the systems, be interesting how that works without it. So like how like with and it'd just be interesting how that works because it doesn't have like with Captain Toad. Excuse me. It required the microphone for things. There's no mic
on the Switch.
Yeah. It's the same thing with the Bravely Default. It uses the camera for some things, but yet there's no camera for the Switch. So it'll be interesting how that plays. And you even have the AI device. So, but no, those are my games. I would gladly love to play them again. Oh no, there's actually another one. How could I forget? Because I played it last year, and it has Christina V in it. Tales of Vesperia.
Yes, Tales of Vesperia.
Yeah.
That is another one that is up there for me. That is another Tales game that I would definitely go through again. That
if you ever want to hear Shantae's voice actress scream angrily and vow vengeance, that's the game for you.
Yeah. Yes. And not even in Shantae's voice. She does it. I didn't even know it was her.
She has a wider range. Christina V is a good voice
Christina
actress.
V is
She has a
range.
wider range of voices.
She does, because before that, I only knew her through, of course, Shantae and Miraculous, the TV show, and both her character Marinette and Shantae sound similar. So it really took me off guard to see her do that, like deep, like voice that sounds like neither of the two.
Yeah.
Rough voice. So it's like, wow. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are my games. There's plenty more to come. I can't wait to play through. Oh yeah, how could I forget Chrono Trigger that Matt said? Because that has my favorite combat system of RPGs. It's I don't know how it became my favorite. It's interesting how like it meshes. You have like a field system. Where depending on what element you use, the field system will become the element, and the depending on what is because it's like the ability you use mixes in with the element to see like what damage you do because like you want more of the element that's weak against the enemy to fill up the field. and what I like about that system is that you can do a weak attack that has a higher chance of hitting them, or a strong attack that has a lower chance of hitting them. But the offset of that is that with the bigger attack, it gives you more points to use some of the more higher abilities. There's abilities you can only use. So, like, the weaker attack only gives you 1 point, the medium attack gives you 2, and the stronger one gives you 3.
And when he says points, there's an element grid system in the game where you have to spend the points to use elements, aka magic spells.
Right. Which is, yeah, which I'm going. Each one has each character has their own unique grid, and it goes up from 1 to, I think, 7, 8.
No, 8.
And so you have to build that. And what I like about the system is that it's not that you just have to build up. It's not like you only need 8 to get just to use 8. You can build up to 8 and use any number of the other abilities that add up to 8.
Yeah, that does subtract from your points. It's basically points just a wallet system.
It's pretty much a wallet system. It's just it's one of those systems that it's at least for me, it was hard to understand. But once you know how it works, it just the combat. For me, it flows smoothly. It flows so well for me. I really do. That's why it's what I guess say one of my favorites. But it's just I haven't seen any other system any other RPG like do anything similar to that, especially with like a field system. So it's like
a field system, the element grid, the splash of agility features they put in the game because they have to decide turn order. Because you can attack with anyone you want from your party of 3. You don't have to go in order. You can switch them with the square button.
Yeah.
Right. Yep.
So that's all the games that you were playing on, like that. All the games that you loved in regards to RPGs, Zykrul?
That off the top of my head, because there's just way too many I would go back and play. Those are just the ones that I would guarantee go back to go back to play.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Shad, your turn.
Okay. Well, of course, it all starts with Super Mario RPG, which I can argue part of that is nostalgia, and probably is, but I honestly think it is a very solid RPG that most people should try. It's
absolutely
despite it having a Mario skin, the plot is nothing like what you'd expect from a Mario game.
Right.
It gets very dark. The the writing has some good comedic timing. The gameplay pretty much introduced the concept of like timed hits that's used in a lot of future, not just Mario games either. Lots of RPGs have decided to kind of use that mechanic.
Yeah, exactly. They did.
Overall, like, it's one of those games. It's on paper. It sounds like Mario RPG. That's
paper
for kids, but like it's a really great game. That's always going to have a place for me. I really hope it comes to Switch somehow.
Yeah.
One of my favorite comedic parts of that game was when Mario has to like mime out the story for the characters catching up.
I love it. Make a sweet joke out of the silent protagonist thing.
They do, yeah.
Honestly, the best part about that game was like the whole Booster's Castle, and then all of a sudden, like during the wedding, and it's like there's a scene that could happen in so many ways. Where like where Mario has to stop the wedding, and then like Booster ends up kissing Mario instead of Peach.
It could be Bowser in one case too. The Bowser has almost canonically kissed Mario, depending on how your playthrough goes.
And then they go, yuck, tastes like sandpaper. That's what they were basically like.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's the first game where like Bowser works together with Mario, and Peach puts in work too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quality game. If you haven't played it, go play it.
That's true, Royal. You can get the double.
Continue, Shad.
The one other Super Nintendo game I want to mention that I should mention, I didn't play till much later was Final Fantasy VI. As I've said, it's pretty much my favorite mainline Final Fantasy game. I played it on the Switch Classic Edition, and I love that it has such a diverse cast of characters that all play kind of uniquely, have their own little mechanics. Then N64 doesn't have a lot to note other than Paper Mario, which is a good game. Don't get me wrong, Paper Mario is up there, but like if you had to play one Mario RPG game, I would recommend both Mario RPG, Super Mario RPG, or Thousand Year Door over Paper Mario. N60 or Game Boy Advance had so many gems, as I mentioned. Golden Sun is the big one for me.
Yeah,
Golden Sun. It's in a lot of ways, it feels like it's not super innovative, but it kind of is. It has some really interesting mechanics of summoning and these little things you collect.
And the critical hit animations and the animations in general.
It's surprising it's a Game Boy Advance game. It's very
with the Jin, you can either have them on or off and have them mixed to get the certain summonings. Yeah, actually, that was my list too. I forgot about. I don't know how I forgot about that one because that one is.
Yeah, it just has a very unique mechanics, despite also being very much stereotypical RPG mechanics.
It is because it stores an earth guy, an earth person, a fire person, a wind person, a water person.
Yeah.
So yeah,
and they base them off
it's essentially the best Avatar: The Last Airbender game.
Yeah, and they have it's like Mars, Jupiter, and.
They list them after planets. Yeah, Venus. Yeah, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Mercury.
Yeah. I can't mention that without saying The Lost Age, the sequel, because it is one of the best RPG sequels in my opinion. But really, the game was basically split into two games.
Bouncing off of my previous discussion of how well a JRPG handles a sequel, Golden Sun does it pretty damn well.
Yeah, it even lets you transfer data from your save file with a password.
The reason why is because the first characters from the first game don't show up until the second game until way later, but they're the same level as you left them off in your first game, which if you do a password transfer.
Yeah, it's...
That was a cool mechanic!
It was, and they only split it because it was too big just to be one game, because their plan was to have it just be one game.
We'll mention Dark Dawn, which came out much later. It's a very mixed feelings fans have about it. I just hate that it's the franchise killer of it because
they tried to make a Golden Sun 3 and it didn't work out. So
it wasn't a horrible game. My biggest gripe is that it has so many cliffhangers that'll never be addressed.
Yeah, those never going to be Golden Sun 4.
There was too many. And it didn't even have it. To me, it didn't have its own story because they kept calling back to the first two. Way more than
the first two games are fantastic.
No, they are, but the story should.
I was addressing the audience, not you.
There was a couple other Game Boy Advance ones I did want to mention. I want to mention Fire Emblem, which Matt did mention. But Fire Emblem, huge part of my childhood. Like when I played Smash Melee, I was the type of person that played those games and would see a character I don't recognize and wouldn't even question it. Be like, whatever.
That's why I wanted to know where Ness came from. I didn't know. Who Ness was.
I don't question it. Is the thing.
What
are you talking about? It's Nintendo's first system.
I saw Marth and Roy, and I was just like, "Oh, they're from some game I haven't played. Oh well." And I just moved on. And then one day I found out, oh, that's a game that we just haven't gotten, and here we're getting one. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm curious. And that was my first dive into Fire Emblem, and man, I've put a lot of hours into all the Fire Emblem games.
Fire Emblem 7, which is the first one we got in America, it's a really good game.
Really great game. Sacred Stone is my favorite Fire Emblem game. That was also Game Boy Advance.
Oh, that's a good one too,
That's fair.
And Three Houses I'm actually currently playing through for the third time to get another route, because I want to get through that before Three Hopes.
Yeah.
But aside from that, one other I really want to mention, Final Fantasy Tactics Advance. It was my first tactical RPG, which is a little different than a strategy RPG. But I hadn't played Final Fantasy Tactics. To this day, I've played a little of the original Tactics, but Tactics and Tactics A2, or Advance and A2, those I put so many hours in. I wish to get a sequel, and I really love both tactical RPGs and strategy RPGs. Outside of that, GameCube had some great gems, as we've mentioned. Tales of Symphonia. I'm not sure there's anything I could say that Matt hasn't said. Great. It has great story and characters. It has the cooperative mode. It has it one of those games that you don't know when it's going to end. You're just like approaching it and like, nope, not done yet.
No, that's
But
like
wait,
pretty
there's
much
more.
Tales. It's pretty much all
Yeah.
Tales.
Classic JRPG
Yeah.
twist, of course, keeps the story going.
Yeah, and Tales is like the expert of it in general.
Yeah, it
but
is. They are.
Out of all the Tales games I played, I felt like Symphonia did it the most.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Yeah, they did.
Yep.
I will mention I also really love Vesperia in the Tales games.
Oh, yeah.
Vesperia has, in my opinion, out of the game entries I played, Vesperia has the best characters. The story isn't as good as some of the ones I played, but the characters, oh my goodness. So, also Bait and Kato's, I wish that would be brought back. That was very solid story. Some plot twists I've never seen done in any game
Yes,
or
I
media.
know
period.
exactly what plot twist you're talking about. There's
Yeah.
one thing that game does that no other JRPG has ever done, period, or to this day.
I don't think any game has done, period. Like,
Maybe,
Man.
depends on what you say about it, but yeah.
Yeah.
Either way, Lost Kingdoms I touched on, that's one that always holds a special place in my heart, and I actually want to stream it at some point. It's a card-based RPG that it's not like other card-based, or it's not turn-based. You use them to summon monsters. It's really cool.
Yeah.
It is.
And there's one other I wanted to mention on GameCube, but it's slipping my mind. I know Crystal Chronicles I really liked, but that's not it.
And I know you touched
I
on
didn't-
Phantasy Star.
I think that was actually Phantasy Star was like my first exposure to like an MMO. Like I played RuneScape, but like RuneScape isn't even like an MMO. Like it's not a modern MMO. It's very very basic.
Yeah.
TSO is while I've never gotten to 2 as much as the original games on GameCube, they really shaped my expectations when I play an RPG, like an MMO. Other than that, the Wii, I do want to mention Operation Rainfall. All 3 of those games I thought were pretty good. I wasn't huge on the last
story.
on the last story. Pandora's Tower
Yeah.
was my favorite of those 3.
Same.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. No.
Great
That.
action RPG. I don't think it got much attention. It has a very unique story that's very tense. A lot of endings.
Yeah.
And some mechanics I haven't really seen done before.
I feel like Pandora's Tower was just kind of thrown in there. It was mainly the other 2 that people really wanted.
Yeah, and I
Because
felt
the-
like.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. I was probably gonna say the same thing as you because the other, to me, I like Pandora's Tower because the other 2 were the general, like the traditional JRPG. Pandora's Tower had a lot of unique. Not only was it like real time battle system, but it also
Real
also had
time
like
in general. It had a timer.
It was real time in general. You had a character that was you had to take care of, and if you didn't do it within time, she would. It's pretty much the beginning of the game. She gets cursed. If you don't help her, she'll get turned into a monster.
Yeah, your
You have
wife
to go
will turn into a monster. So.
Yeah, so you have to go into the tower, kill the beasts, get the meat from them, bring that back to her to eat. To not kill it off, but hold it back. For time, and it's I haven't seen any other system that does like it. Does something, and it's very generous checkpoints. And
I think it's out of the 3, it's the most underrated. I rarely hear people talk about Pandora's Tower, and that's a shame. It was one of my favorite games on the Wii.
Yeah.
Yep.
Xenoblade, obviously, we've all talked about it a lot. Xenoblade X was ironically my favorite, which I feel like is the least liked. It's the black sheep of the game. But it takes the things I love most about the game, the huge open world, the exploration factor, and that's what it dials up to 11. It's not as linear, but it's like my favorite thing about Xenoblade is just exploring the massive environments and like stumbling upon cool stuff, finding some random thing that can destroy you and running for your life. Like I love those moments. Plus I love the giant mechs and but all the Xenoblade games are all really high up there for me, as I think Zykrul you described it as the offline MMOs, which
Xenoblade, yes.
which is how I describe them too. I honestly, in terms of RPGs, they are not one of my favorite mechanically, but they're one of my favorite in terms of lore and exploration. And really looking forward to 3. I wanted to replay both 1 and 2 again before it comes out, but I don't know if I'll have time.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, other than that, like, there's Pokemon. Pokemon's a huge part of my life at this point. Like, I've committed so far at this point that I can't just be like, no.
Shad, we met over Pokemon. Shell brought you into my stream when I was just doing raids for Sword and Shield when it first came out. And we met over that. Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was over Ace Attorney. Okay.
No, it wasn't. It was actually you met me a night doing just raids in Pokemon Sword and Shield.
Yeah, because Shad,
my memory sucks. So yeah,
it's okay. Don't worry.
Because Shad,
I got you back.
The earlier, I don't know if it was the first time you met Matt, but I know the earliest one was when you, I forget what game you were playing when they invaded you, but you mentioned that you were doing the Xillia
It was
Chronicles.
Okami rated me when I was still big into Friday the 13th, the multiplayer game,
You
and
were
I was
playing-
playing
That's
to Xillia for my 1-year anniversary stream.
you
Yes,
were playing a lot of
Xillia,
Friday.
yeah.
You were playing a lot of Friday the 13th at the time. Yeah.
I do miss that game, but yes,
Well,
and yes, I would eventually do Xillia 1 for my my 1st-year anniversary. Of course, it was my favorite game at the time.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Oh, your first year. That's okay. That's been so many years now.
Yeah.
I know.
But like, because like I think
Where's my cane?
I remember because I think Shad and I were doing like max raid battles with Mystic, and I forgot, and I think it was my buddy Albert. We were playing raid battles, and then we just raided Matt, who was playing Pokemon as well. So it made sense. It made sense.
It all made sense.
Yeah. Pokemon's even become a big part of my like streaming. I've done Nuzlocks and other kind of stuff like that, randomizers.
Yeah.
But outside of that, there's some odd ones I wanted to mention. Like, let's see, there was a few more less popular RPGs. Dragon Quest I haven't put much time in, but what I have has been very fun. I played a lot of 9.
Oh, Dragon Quest 9 is amazing. I'll talk about that in a little bit, but you continue.
There's Bravely Default. Bravely Default, I know Zykrul mentioned, but like, I feel the best things about Bravely Default are the worst things about Bravely Default, in that it's time looping thing, and you only find out why it's so good if you're willing to put the time in and go through all the loops, but doing that is tedious.
There's also, I know, an RPG that you absolutely love that you talk about.
One Dragon just said that was one of the ones. Yeah, Kingdom Hearts. I am a big Kingdom Hearts fan. Ironically, I got my PlayStation 2 specifically for Dance Dance Revolution, because there was no way to play that on Nintendo system at the time. As before Mario Mix. The Mario Mix was great anyways. But I got it.
How does the story go in Kingdom Hearts?
What?
No, we're going to be here forever.
No, I'm not going to go over it there.
I've only played the first Kingdom Hearts, but yeah.
I got it for Dance Dance Revolution, and I just randomly got Kingdom Hearts as a gift from a friend for my birthday. It was one of the greatest hits version, and I didn't even touch it for like a year. And then Kingdom Hearts 2 came out. Everybody was hyped about it, so I got it day one, not knowing, like, I had like put maybe an hour or two into the first game. I played through Kingdom Hearts 2, barely knowing anything about Kingdom Hearts 1, and I was hooked. And that's another game series that I really love. But part of why I love it is part of what makes it so bad. I love it for the story, and I love it because the story is like a train wreck. And I love watching a train wreck. Like, at this point, I just want to see how bad it's going to get, because Nomura is not the best story writer.
Congrats on 4, by the way.
Kingdom Hearts is up there with, though not a video game, it's like Fate Stay the Night, where you have that like conspiracy theorist corkboard with like red strings connecting to all these characters going which way in that, connecting the stories.
Yeah, no, to this day, I say Nomura he's a good writer. He's not a good narrative writer. He's good with
Yes.
abstract, and you could tell that from Kingdom Hearts. But like an RPG is a story, and it's really become just a mess.
But I have a question for you.
But that's why I play it. I play it for the mess.
Would you consider Nomura to be a better artist than a better writer?
I mean, I think writing is art. I speak as a writer.
But I'm talking about in terms of like actual like drawing and all that. Because his art's actually pretty dope.
Probably, yeah. Like, honestly, I don't think he's a bad writer. I think he's specifically a bad narrative writer.
Okay, yeah. You did say that,
I also think he's kind of a petty person and has made some choices purely out of spite, and I hate it.
Yeah.
Did I mention Theater Rhythm? Theater Rhythm was actually... I had only played a couple mainline Final Fantasy games by then and got Theater Rhythm, and I loved it so much because of the music in Final Fantasy is so great that you don't have to have any nostalgia, and it's still great. And plus I love the RPG mechanics in that. Other than that, there was... DS had a lot of... Fantasy Life. I wanted to mention Fantasy Life.
Oh, yes. How could I forget that?
Fantasy Life rarely gets attention. It was one of my favorite 3DS games of all time.
That added to my list. I don't know how I could forget that one.
Like, it's in my top 5.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like also like an offline MMO.
MMO.
Though it does have... Does it have online or does it have...
It does. You can play up to 3 players with it. The only difference with the online play is that time doesn't change.
Yeah, but that was a really unique one where you have a kind of a job system, but not a job system in how you would think. Like literal jobs. Like you could be like a tailor or you could be a hunter. And you level up
woodsman, craftsman.
Yeah, the 3 types of jobs are either combat-based ones, gathering-based ones, or crafting-based ones. And you can switch freely between them, so you can switch to gathering one, gather your resources, switch to crafting one, forge your weapons and armor, and then switch to combat one and go fight. It was great.
That one's like a collectopedia, but for RPG fans. It's like everything you want to level up. There's so many things to level up with that.
And one last one I want to mention, because otherwise I'll be here all night, is just since the 3DS eShop is closing, and I try to bring this up whenever I can, Unchained Blades on the 3DS. It was on the PSP also. Both of them, it was only released digitally in the US. And so once the shop's gone, there is no way to play it in the US. It's similar to Etrian Odyssey, I'd say, but way more anime, as all the characters are human-ish with some slight monster qualities, because each of them are children of different monsters, like a dragon or a dryad or phoenix, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And the gameplay is just really great. It's really, I feel, a super underrated game that will probably get buried forever. So if you are looking for any RPGs on the eShop that are going to really be near impossible to get after it closes, get Unchained Blades.
Yeah.
The last one I mentioned.
Yeah, it's like because the PSP store closed last year as planned, while they still kept the PS3 and Vita for now. But yeah, it's got to the point where that game is going to be unless the publisher could somehow manage to bounce back and release it, it's going to be gone after March next year.
I don't think they will. It didn't sell well, especially in the US.
Yeah,
and mainly just because it wasn't known well. It didn't really get particularly bad reviews.
Under the radar, pretty much.
Yeah. But that just goes back to the whole game preservation, why that's important.
Exactly. But yeah, that's basically the RPGs that you love the most, right?
Some of them.
Of course.
The long and short of it.
Yeah. Like for instance, for me, I just thought of one, and I'm only going to name this one because it has to do with time traveling again. Is Radiant Historia.
Oh yeah, I heard about that one.
That I highly recommend it. It's just what I like about it is that you can do an event, but you blocked off, so you have to go back in time to try to fix it, and there's many paths. I would recommend it. There's a sequel, which I haven't played yet, but that is another one I would recommend as well.
Yeah, Child of Light. People get Child of Light.
I have Child of
Light's
Light.
a great game.
Beautiful writing.
Yeah, no, trust me. If this was like a 5 or 6 hour podcast, I'd be okay with this.
Yeah, but we do have some time to get through.
Yeah,
but so now I'll talk about my own personal experiences with RPGs, like my own favorite like games. Like I've already talked about Earthbound, and I talked about how much it has actually molded me and how much it means to me. It's actually a sentimental value. Like, it's one of those games I still have the cartridge, and I treasure it to the point where, like, it's easily something that's one of my favorite games ever made. Granted, of course, don't get me wrong. A game like Chrono Trigger, I absolutely like that game more as a game in both a narrative standpoint as well as gameplay standpoint. Chrono Trigger is definitely the better game, but Earthbound means way too much to me to the point where I actually think it's easily like one of the best out there. And there's a lot of things about Mother 3 that the best way that we could ever get Mother 3 is if it was ever remade from the ground up, and they would have to make a lot of different changes in regards to what they can do to localize the game or for the worldwide audience. They would have to make a lot of changes because the original game as it is, there's no way that Mother 3 will ever come out here. For like one of the big reasons is certain type of characters called the Magypsies. I've heard rumblings in which that, like, they didn't know exactly how they wanted to weigh in on wanting to change it or leave it as it is, because no matter what they do, they're going to receive backlash for that either way. So it would be I guess they figured that it'd be better just to not release it. It's definitely not the only reason. There's like other reasons. Like the reason that the games were never released here is that it's super niche and also bad timing. Bad timing because the GBA was on its way out around like 2006, 2007, and around like and by then, like, the GBA was practically dead, while the DS was like the active handheld at the time.
Yeah.
So like
that was the third pillar.
So in a business sense, and also GBA sales were declining, and the Game Boy Micro was a huge flop. So in a business sense, which I understand it, I may not agree with it, but I understand it, that it just wasn't the perfect time to release it at the time. And I've heard, like, because Reggie even said that there was a plan that, which got shot down, by the way, that he was considering like wanting Mother 3 released here, but as it is with no translations, and it would have just been released. And he thinks that, and he thinks that if Satoru Iwata would have still been around, it could have happened. We don't know. I'm going to assume it probably wouldn't have happened. It wouldn't have worked if you're just going to release the game as it is, like, without translating it at all. There's no way it would have actually worked. And yes, I will play Tokyo Mirage Sessions. That game I'm going to be playing in June. So yeah. Other RPGs I play. I've also played Super Mario RPG. I've beat it twice or 3 times. I've only ever beat it once on the cartridge and the other time on the Wii's Virtual Console. And it's definitely a great game. I will say that much.
Ironically, I don't know if I ever beat it on the original cartridge. I was not that good at games back then.
Yeah. However, over the years, my opinion of the game kind of lowered, not because of the game itself, but because of so many fans of certain characters, especially Geno, mainly. But it's more towards Smash fans that want Geno, despite the fact that many of them probably have never played the game ever. And that kind of
opened. You feel, but that shouldn't lower your opinion of the game.
But that kind of opened up a can of worms. Well, it definitely has lowered my opinion of Geno. Mallow I actually do like. Mallow is actually a pretty interesting character.
I like all 5 of them, so yeah.
And some of my other favorite characters are some of the bosses in the game. Like Booster is definitely one of them.
Nimbus was great.
Yeah.
Mithy just has
the Axum Rangers, mainly because of the fact that growing up I was a fan of Power Rangers, so the Axum Rangers definitely
great reference.
Yeah,
I wish Axum Rangers had more of a presence and didn't just come out of nowhere for one fight.
That is true. They could have been written better in the story, but I mean, Mario games just do whatever they want.
Like, some villains got a lot of build up in that game, and then some, like Axum Rangers, were just like all of a sudden like, ha, surprise.
Yeah. What was another one? What was another RPG that I absolutely loved? Well, the Fire Emblem series, my first one was the Blazing Blade, or sometimes it's called Blazing Sword, but it's Blazing Blade, which has Lyn, Ellawood, and Hector.
The homies.
One.
That's the one that I got because, like many others, my first exposure to Fire Emblem was through Super Smash Bros. Melee, because they were originally considered cutting the characters out of the North American and European versions, but they decided to just let them in, and because of that, now we have Fire Emblem. Sacred Stones is great. I've played that. I played Awakening. I could not get into Fates. I just could not get into Fates at all, no matter how much I tried. Maybe because I started.
It's all right. That game's very polarizing.
Maybe
Fates, I think, is the only one I haven't finished.
Maybe,
I played.
Maybe it's because I had the collector's edition. Maybe because I started with the Conquest story, and I was stuck in a certain mission where you have like all these there's like these. I'm not sure if they're like rock monsters or something. You have to go up a hill.
I know what you're talking about. That's chapter 21 or 2, I believe. I know what you're talking about.
Because apparently I was actually getting close to finishing the game.
You were, yeah. The game only has 28 chapters.
Yes. Also,
or 7.
Only 28.
Yes. Project Cross Zone has been mentioned in chat, and I'm actually going to highlight the chat right here that that RBW has posted. Like Robo Wizard just said this right over here. Because here's the thing. Project Cross Zone, for me, I love the game. Well, maybe not love, but I like the game. I enjoyed it. And it's fun. Like, the gameplay... The main criticism I have for the gameplay is the fact that you have, like, characters having their own turns, and I think it was based on their speed, because it's a matter of whoever's the fastest character out of everybody in the field, no matter if it's the player's characters or the enemy's characters, like whoever's the fastest goes first. And it's like, I did not miss out on the first game. The second game, I still gotta finish. I only got through half the game, but I never actually went back. I gotta finish it. But yeah. Yeah, Namco Cross Capcom for PS2 was never translated. It was actually made by Monolith Soft. It was one of the last games that Monolith actually worked on while working with Namco. I don't know why it never released. I don't know if it had to do with Sony's anti-2D laws at the time, because they actually were very strict about that from PS1 and PS2. They were very strict, and Capcom was one of the few companies that actually hated the fact, but SNK was actually like even more angry about that.
What an awful take that has aged horribly.
Yes, like if that game would have released on like GameCube or Xbox, even if it didn't sell well, like Microsoft at the time would have just been happy with anything. Nintendo would have been fine with just about anything, really. But yeah, like. Overall, just good stuff right there. And yeah, like yeah. Overall, good stuff. Just I absolutely enjoyed that game so much. And like I don't know, like I absolutely think that Project Cross Zone, the problem is that the game is actually too long. I will say that. The game is too long. Yeah. I honestly think that like with Project Cross Zone 2, at least with that one, they actually changed it so that like you have player's turn, all the characters in that turn, like based on your side, you get to control their actions and what they do, and then you have the enemy's turn. Because at least with that, because here's the thing, you have Namco, Capcom, and Sega characters in Project Cross Zone 1 and 2. Like, you got Like, having Street Fighter characters, Tekken characters, and Virtua Fighter characters was a huge deal for me. But then you have characters from different worlds. You have the Mega Man X characters. You have Space Channel 5, Dead Rising. You have Resonance of Fate. You have, let's see, the Dot Hack games. You have the Tales games.
Yep.
All these
Yuri's
characters. All these characters. They have so many weird references. Yes, Game Ground, a very obscure arcade and Sega Genesis game referencing that. That I thought was amusing. I'm not the biggest fan of Game Ground. I thought it was an okay game, but the reference in general was just amazing. I was hoping that there would be like in the second game, they have a few Nintendo characters, mainly like Fire Emblem and Xenoblade, but I was hoping for a third game. Like if there were, let's say for example, if there were to be like a third and possibly like final game where you have like all the characters, like all characters from both games, like basically come back, wrap the whole story up, because they both are connected in some ways. Yes, Segata Sanshiro, the Japanese Sega Saturn mascot, is in the game. What more can you ask for? Yeah, you got Yakuza, you got a lot of other stuff. Yeah. Oh yeah, like Shinji Mikami has gone on record feeling bad about not allowing Bayonetta in Project Cross Zone 2. But yeah, yeah, and the thing is that Shinji Mikami like doesn't even work for Platinum anymore. He has his own studio because like he's still doing horror games like the Evil Within and all that stuff. But as far as other games, as far as other RPGs go, Dragon Quest IX. I want to just talk about that. I want to take a little time to talk about this. So Dragon Quest IX, I got it like because there was like a buy one get one half off sale at Toys R Us. It was Monster Hunter 3 Try, and then there was Dragon Quest IX. I bought both of the games, but I mostly play Dragon Quest IX. And every week at Nintendo World, well now Nintendo New York, they would have an event called Tag Mode Tuesdays because there's a feature called Tag Mode, which is Prototype Street Pass. And you would go every week just to get dungeon maps, some other items, and everything. It was some really good stuff right there. And that's actually how I met Royal Blue Wizard. We would go every week just to play every Tuesday. Just to go and play Dragon Quest IX. Great game. Because I remember those ads with Seth Green advertising the game, because around that time, Nintendo was like doing some sort of advertisements for like Dragon Quest, like for some of their games on DS, and they would get celebrities. And Seth Green did this for Dragon Quest IX. Like he did like I think 2 or 3 commercial spots. I thought they were very amusing. Now, as far as everything else goes, the rest is history. Like, because yeah. Every week for 5 years, but I did kind of stop, mainly because of the fact that when the 3DS came out, it led to Street Pass NYC, which is now Switch and Play NYC, and the rest is history, as they say. But I know I could go on and on about like a lot of other RPGs, and I've already mentioned Xenoblade. I've already mentioned like some of the other games in general, but like Octopath and all that. But I recently got... No, Zykrul, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. No, something I thought. You're good.
It's fine. But I recently got through Paper Mario, played it, beaten it, and now, like, there's still more RPGs I gotta do. Eventually, I would like to do Vagrant Story. I'll tell you some of the RPGs I want to do. I want to do Vagrant Story. I want to do... there was this action RPG called Threats of Fates on the PS1 where you choose like 2 characters. And then like they have the same goal. They have the same like type of story in a way, but they have their own goals and motives, but different gameplay styles. It's from Square. It was like a 2000 release from Square. Valkyrie Profile. I would like to play that. I would like to play the Star Ocean games. Of course, Kingdom Hearts. But not only Kingdom Hearts, but also Persona. Shin Megami Tensei. I still have to play Shin Megami Tensei 5. I have it, though. Oh, yes, I would also like to play Suikoden. I would really like to play the Suikoden games.
Suikoden is an amazing series.
Yes, those are definitely on my radar.
That was the first game for me that taught me about permadeath with characters.
The Mana series, I have the collection as well as the remake of Trials of Mana, and I just recently bought Legend of Mana on the Switch.
Yep, great one.
Yeah, and there's so much more, but yeah, those were some of the RPGs I played. Yeah.
One I want to mention that I completely forgot that I will definitely go through again and would love to see on the Switch is the Mega Man Battle Network series.
Oh yeah.
Oh, those I gotta do.
Boy, Capcom, when's that collection coming up?
Yeah.
Please.
Hopefully sooner rather than later.
I played the first one on Virtual Console and a little of the second one. I was getting into the
Wait, Virtual Console on what system?
Wii U.
What's a Wii U?
Yeah, right?
Well, anyway.
It's the peripheral for the Wii.
It's the Proto Switch.
Yeah, we're talking. It's
the Proto Switch, yeah. Alright, but yeah, those were the RPGs I actually enjoyed. Yeah. Okay, so now for the next topic, and we're probably going to do this one as a short one as planned, which is the difference between the Japanese and Western RPGs, because I want to know like everyone's perspective on it, like the differences between the Western and Japanese RPGs. Let's start with you, Matt. What do you think?
Well, it's funny you mention that, Pete, and don't worry. To be honest, we JRPG experts can describe the differences way less than 30 or 50 minutes. It's actually quite simple. So it's funny, during the commercial break, we actually were discussing some Western RPGs. ZY brought up Mass Effect, and I brought up Dragon Age Origins. Two fantastic Western RPGs, actually. I was actually saying, because Pete, you said yourself earlier in the podcast that you wanted to get into more Western RPGs. My number one recommendation to start out is either, well, Mass Effect 1 can be a little rough, but Mass Effect or Dragon Age Origins. Dragon Age Origins is a fantastic Western RPG that I've seen people not even be into Western RPGs, and they get into it and get enthralled by it. But anyway, the difference between them and JRPGs, it's a few things. Western RPGs are somewhat more medieval based. The most popular ones being Baldur's Gate, made by BioWare. BioWare's done a lot of Western RPGs. Of quality is to be discussed nowadays is something else, but BioWare has done fantastic Western RPGs in the past, and Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 were definitely the quality diamond standard back in the late 90s. I played those with friends even too. It actually had a co-op mechanic too, because you use a party of 6. And Western RPGs sort of work like this, or at least the BioWare's the leading quality of them work like this. While JRPGs have an ATB, turn-based, or real-time battle system, Western RPGs, again the BioWare ones, use a round-by-round system imitating D&D, which is why it appeals to more Western audience, because D&D is more popular in the West.
Yeah.
So Baldur's Gate 1, 2, and Dragon Age Origins use a round-by-round D&D system where it's not quite ATB. It's actually a very interesting posit in between ATB and real time. It's not fully real time, it's not fully ATB, but you have to go through quick keys and hotkeys and choose your moves and choose abilities to move, or have your character auto attack in a round by round feature. The way it works is that it calculates D&D rounds like it's like one round every like 4 seconds. And during the round your character can auto attack, pop off a hotkey spell move, this and that, and the difference, and that's how the combat works. And you have standard classes. You have your warrior, thief, and mage, which does appear in JRPGs also. That's one small connection. But you have your warrior, thief, and mage for like basic. But of course, big Western RPGs go deeper. They have like your monk, your shapeshifter, your ranger. You have all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Cleric.
So yeah, your cleric. So a lot of
and during the combat, you can actually switch between the characters as well.
Yeah.
It's not just choose one, you're done. You can actually, during the combat, switch between the 4 that's in the group to do things.
Yep.
So someone quickly in chat just bring up the VAT system. I'm not the biggest fan of Fallout 3, but I have experienced it before. But yes, that's another topic.
Yes.
But yes, so where was? Oh yeah. So a lot of Western RPGs rely on a job system. Again, similar to JRPGs, but Western RPGs love their job system. You're not really playing a Western RPG without doing a job, a class, if you will.
Yeah.
Which they love to do, especially the BioWare ones. One thing else, I'm sort of going to go off in a whole bunch of different directions, just describing random differences I can think of on the top of my head now that I've described the base of the Western RPGs. A difference between Western and JRPGs: Western RPGs use abilities and spells that more do status effects, while an element system like JRPGs, like your fire, wind, water, earth, light, dark, whatever, they don't really exist in Western RPGs. Western RPGs have fire spells and sometimes earth spells, but instead of doing sort of an elemental damage, they mostly cause status ailments. D&D spells love to cause burning or slow by earth or blinding by light or something else. While they may have elements, they don't quite much do elemental damage. Even though it does show up a little, they more so do them for status effects. Western RPGs love their status effects.
Yeah.
as far as combat goes.
Yeah.
So then a lot of Western RPGs do D&D round by round combat. Oh, and boy, this is just a random like offshoot. Western RPGs love to describe the spells like this. Ooh. Like JRPGs say launch fire at enemy and do damage. That's fine. I remember the Baldur's Gate 2 manual had like describing fireball in like a half page. Like, this fireball launches from your caster at 12 meters per second and goes and hits the enemy for 4D rolling times damage. I'm like, oh, okay, thanks. Yeah. Western RPGs love to do that shit.
And you really saw that in Neverwinter Nights.
Oh yeah.
Yes, you did. Yes.
Yeah.
Now again, go on.
That all kind of, I think, is once again, as you pointed out, it kind of stems from D&D, and Western RPGs most of them are offshoots of D&D, and so they're just
they love their D&D.
They definitely do.
That system as a base.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna also highlight a comment from Royal Blue Wizard, because he says that honestly the biggest difference between Western and Japanese RPGs is what they're looking to do with it. JRPGs, especially from the 90s and onwards, are far more about you experiencing the narrative that they designed for you, while WRPGs, especially from the 90s and onwards, are far more about you building your own narrative. Yeah.
If I still have the mic, yes, I agree with that. They are actually very right. Well, I was going to mention that Western RPGs always have a create avatar character. I've never really seen, well, except for maybe a couple examples, depending on how we classify it later. But I've never really seen a Western RPG star a written character by the game itself. It always stars you creating your avatar.
Yeah.
They love that. Mass Effect, all Dragon Ages, all Baldur's Gates, they love that. Fallout 3 even too, the Fallouts. And Skyrim, they all love that.
Oh yeah,
like the Diablo series. You just pick a character, either Amazon, Barbarian, all that stuff. You don't really have your own.
Yeah.
Character.
So I really can't list any big Western RPGs that actually write their own main character.
Yeah.
Indivisible has their own main character.
Oh, that's true. So I guess if you don't mind, we can slightly I'm not going to hold the mic forever. I'm not going to hog the spotlight, but we can transition over to discussing sort of in between Western RPGs throughout, because RPGs become more popular nowadays ever since the 90s. We were actually discussing this before the podcast started, the distinction between the two, and it's how it's a little blurred, because we mentioned 3 games. I guess Indivisible now, I didn't realize. We were mentioning Child of Light, South Park, and Indivisible using classic turn-based JRPG style, but are made by a Western audience.
Oh yeah.
So that's becoming really big. Like
it is.
It used to be very much divided by Japanese or Western distributors, but like now, like especially since the indie scene took off, like look at like you can try to make an argument now that Paper Mario is a JRPG because it's from Japan. Mm-hmm. But then are you saying that Bug Fables is that a JRPG? Because that's made by a Western developer.
But it's like
it's mimicking Paper Mario.
But it's like we're gonna get to the point where we're gonna get some games that blur the lines more and more, having elements from both the Japanese and Western mixed into one. I see that happening in the future. But
it's almost like we have to come up with a new genre now, actually, to be honest.
It's just just RPGs.
I think I talked to Zykrul about this at an earlier date, that I think RPG is the most nebulous defined genre in gaming at this point.
Yeah.
There is the widest difference between like the vast sides of RPGs compared to any other genre. And I don't think we have good defining words for it. I don't even think that Western RPG or Japanese RPG are properly defining words anymore,
Yeah.
at least in the words that we use for them. I don't think they're split by Western and Japanese anymore.
All right. Shad, do you have any more things to add to this particular topic?
Probably not.
All right.
I just have one minor thing. Royal Blue Wizard to bring up. I totally forgot about Geralt from Witcher. There's one Western RPG that does write their own character. It's Geralt from Witcher. How could I silly forget? Silly me.
Yeah. And Zykrul, do you have anything to add to this?
Oh, I think ZY bumbled again. Discorded again. Discord bumbled. Okay, I'll let him know.
It's not.
But,
All right. So Zykrul, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I do apologize. What did Shad say? Because I missed what he was. But like I missed a good chunk of that, which I don't know how to add.
I said that I don't think there's really well-defined terms anymore for RPGs. It's too big of a gulf and difference between different types of RPGs, and that Japanese and Western aren't the right words anymore for the genres.
Yeah.
Oh yes, because I was going to bring up a Japanese title, which technically does a Western style story, is Castlevania, because you don't pick a character; you're always a certain character, either Belmont or Alucard, as the vampire killer.
Mm-hmm.
But again, RPG. No, I was trying to
Trying to figure out.
So I was going to say something. I was going to say something that Shadow's talking about, but my headset got cut off, so I missed all that. But anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, back then in the 90s, you had the mix. 2000s. It's more mixed now. I'm trying to think of like what other RPGs that they have today.
Chat brings up a good one, Dark Souls. It's a JRPG, of course, at heart, but it's very Western inspired.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep. Let's see. I've seen enough of it to. Yeah, I can see that. And that one is even. Yeah, because it has the RPG elements, but also you have the create a character.
Yeah, the creating character, a lot of the Western-inspired architecture, and even story-based. It's a very uninvolved story. Plenty of lore and setting, but an uninvolved story for a
More
JRPG.
about status elements than elements.
That is true, yes, more about status elements than elements.
It's very much a very Western style.
JRPG, yeah!
Yep.
Yeah, it's not just full-blown fire damage and that's it. You have like the burning, the freezing, the poison, as Matt said as well. Just to help you along, and what a lot of RPGs don't do, they don't tend to have a lot of characters do so. Is Final Fantasy is one of the few exceptions. And like with Elden Rings, you have summoning. You can summon familiars or things that to help you along the way to help with combat.
Mm-hmm. Right. Let's see. Anything else?
Yeah, the
Fantasy a Dark Souls inspired Final Fantasy, so it's a Final Fantasy inspired by a Western inspired JRPG.
Yeah.
It's going full circle soon.
Yep.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
it's like what you say, Shad. The wall is closing in. We have the Dark Souls Western inspired JRPG. We have the South Park Charlotte of Light and Bug Fables Western made JRPG inspired game. They're closing in.
Yeah, because South Park. Because that felt like Paper Mario, like the first one.
Yeah.
The second one I heard is more like tactical based.
It's more FFT / Fire Emblem. Yeah.
Yeah, I still have to play the second one at some point. Which
Stick of Truth, I would say, is more of the RPG. If that was mentioned when I was offline, then that one is.
Yeah, I did mention it when you were offline. Yeah.
Because that one's more of the RPG. Because again, it's just turn based. You pick a character, you do your moves, your spells.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know. I think the Fractured But Whole is the tactical one, right?
That's the tactical one.
It's the one very similar to Final Fantasy Tactics or Fire Emblem, aka grid based.
So
I'm honestly shocked there isn't a third one. I figured that they would have made a third one and based it off a different RPG, like they were doing for 1 and 2.
Whenever they feel inspired, no rush. I mean, don't forget, South Park: Trick or Truth had a troubled development. It turned out to be a good game, but it had
because
troubled development.
THQ was originally going to publish the game, and then when they went out of business, Ubisoft picked it up.
Oh yeah, because we have Darksiders for that as well.
Yeah.
That I would want to
Yeah,
get into. And I did hear you mentioned because it's similar to Dragon Age in sort of combat is the Witcher series. And that one I actually want to add is that I do like that one is that that don't see in many RPGs on both sides is that the harder the difficulty, the more you need to use the items on hand. So like if you do easy mode with The Witcher, you can just click and just slash and you're fine. But on the harder difficulties, you have to know what the enemies are weak against and strong against and use the potions that you craft for that, which I love in games that do that. That based instead of just doing the laziness of just it's a harder difficulty. Let's just give the boss 200% more health. Just make it a sponge.
yeah.
So that you do less damage.
JRPGs have always had a rough transition to making difficulty modes.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
Consistently been a thing, and like I think Fire Emblem's a good example that actually had good difficulty modes until it became more mainstream. And now
you're right, mainstream.
And now it just buffs up all the health.
Now it's just like ha ha lunatic, ha ha ha.
And it's not even fun on those difficulties.
Yeah, it's really not.
It's
I
not.
100% agree with you.
But yeah.
It's not.
But yeah, I think we practically have a good agreement on Western and understanding on Western versus the Japanese RPGs. And yes, we did talk about the Tales series. I will say I think Tales of Vesperia is amazing, but that's the only Tales game I played and beaten.
Oh, and Jester, I remember your name. Yeah, and one of my favorite JRPGs of all time is Tales of Exilia.
Yes.
So I'm fine.
But yeah,
and mine Vesperia as well. So
yeah, like we do have one more topic that we want to talk about, which
alrighty.
And it's basically how have RPGs influenced you? And I'm going to start off with Shad on this one. How have RPGs influenced you?
Well, let's see. For one, because they are generally my favorite genre of games, they've really shaped my interests in just on how I want to spend my free time. I enjoy just sitting down and doing some mindless quests in an RPG. That's a good way to unwind for me. I like longer games because I'm used to JRPGs, and while I acknowledge some genres work better shorter, it makes it less of an issue that a game is long for me. That seems normal to me.
Mm-hmm.
Additionally, I think a lot of the stories have influenced me a lot. As I vaguely said earlier, I'm a writer, and I've been writing since I was pretty young, but I've also played video games, including RPGs, since I was pretty young, and I imagine a lot of that focus on story has helped build that interest, especially since when up through my undergrad, I was originally planning even to go into I was in a game design major. I was planning to go fully into video game writing, which obviously RPGs are the first thing you'd think of there. And that was very much what I would have loved to be working on. And I don't know, maybe someday I will.
Oh, yeah.
But I believe that's affected a lot. I think my interest in Japanese culture in general started with JRPGs. And I was playing JRPGs before I really knew much about what anime or manga was. It's all comes back to that, and just in general, RPG they've gotten me through a lot of hard times. It's a lot of being escapism, and yeah, I think that's a lot of the ways that it's hard to even fully quantify that answer, but I think that's a lot of the best thoughts I could say on it.
All right. Zykrul, I'll have you go next. How have RPGs in general have influenced you as a person?
Let's see. A lot of it is like Jeff said, escapism. A lot of the characters I can relate to. Actually, quite recently, like with Persona 5, with some of the characters. It's more a lot of the. I always enjoyed telling my own stories. I've always enjoyed the way it influenced me is that haven't done it so recently, but in my 20s, I was doing a lot of writing because of the stories of the elements of the. Um, it was like, oh, they've done this, they've done that. They had like the twists and the turns. And I would like to do that. Like I would still like to write a story to where I could just give that to the people instead of me just playing the game and finding it for myself. I would just like to create my own story and have other people react to it and see what they think of it. It definitely has, especially since like me being. It was my escapism because again, a lot of times I was bullied growing up. It allowed me to escape to other worlds and connect with other characters that may have been bullied or may not have been uh, I don't know, I want to say lucky, but you mean didn't have the right cards dealt for them growing up, and how a lot of them were able to like overcome things in moments, and that has helped me in a lot to where um, instead of just doing nothing, even though it's been slow, it's helped me to improve myself to know what I feel is right and wrong, what I feel uh, um, uh, knowing for how should I word it? How not to I still have issues with socializing, but it still showed me ways on what not to do and what to do during conversations, and it helped me to see it, like since in a way you're pretty much living the RPG story vicariously, sort of, because yes, you're playing it, but you're not really part of the group fully. It's sort of like how you would in public, you would just watch people, see what they do, see how they react to some of these talking about reactions, and yeah, even though the game's scripted and all that, it still helped me to uh, understand how to go about with socializing and find those cues that I have difficulty with, and it's influenced me in a way of it's pretty much helped change. I mean, and I still have like and it's not just games. It's not like I didn't have bad parents. I had my mom is a wonderful person. She helped me with all this too. Um, it helped me see what to do. Like I said, see how to do, what not to do. Um, it just be more. I still step up, but it still helps me just to be more. And when I say more, it doesn't mean like I've always been kind to people. I try to be kind to people, and I feel like I try to be, and I know I am, and I've seen moments where people can like perfect example, Zidane from Final Fantasy IX. He he screws up in a lot of areas that uh, he thinks is okay. Like I thought was okay as my teen years, but there's a lot of stuff that he should not have uh, uh, been doing. Yeah, he's a jokester, but I was a jokester, and um, but I would take it like really too far on things, and it influenced me to help me better see who I am and to be better with how I react in. I know I'm repeating myself, and
That's fine.
this is why it's a difficult question because I always tend to ramble.
No,
But
it's perfectly fine.
Yeah, and I kind of agree with you. That's not a point I didn't think about, but yeah, I think I've learned a lot on how to improve as a person based on stereotypical anime JRPG protagonists.
Yeah,
like with Zidane, he jokes and he jokes, and you can see at moments with the characters that he's getting on their nerves, and he just doesn't stop. And I remember seeing myself doing that as a kid, thinking, "Oh, people are joking, I'm joking, people are getting mad at me." And then I'm like, well, what did I do if it was okay for them and not me? And it's like, oh, okay, well, apparently now I'm seeing this is a bad thing. Yeah, they're playing it off as a joke, but I'm seeing how that could essentially be bad. So so there's a lot of connections with stuff with RPGs that help me influence with all that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, Matt, your turn.
Alrighty, here we go. So yes, springboarding off of their topics. Yes, the number one things JRPGs have taught me and how they shape me. Well, yes, as per they said, everyone loves a good character growth story. The main character and party of a JRPG included, and yes, it's just a great and yes, you can't be a fan of JRPGs without not liking the good story is told in front of you. For me personally, it's two things regarding which I'll get into. Two topics. One, funnily enough, I hate reading. In real life reading, like real life reading books. That's a me problem. I don't even blame the book. That's a me problem. I just find reading boring. I can't stand it. Never even did it as a kid. I would always fake my summer reading homework. But I love great stories being told to me, and JRPGs, and of course other video games too, but JRPGs do that the absolute best. They tell great, fantastic stories with good, with good beginning, plot setting, middle, rising action, falling action, finale. They do that great, and I can experience great, phenomenal stories of good character growth and this and that, and all sorts of facets of life topics, which are touched upon in fiction. That's why you never underestimate fiction. Regarding good written growth, I have the Tales characters to thank for that. And yes, it's always about growth and overcoming weaknesses and all that. And I can list two lines from the Tales series I always repeat to myself to this very day. Shad probably knows one of them because it's a little corny from Tales of Symphonia 2. Courage is the magic that turns dreams into realities. Albeit a very cheesy line, but one I still hold in my heart, dearest, and defend. And it does. You just gotta believe, like a certain rapping dog says. But he's not a JRPG character. The second line I hold dear to my heart is one from Exilia. It's actually funny. It's at a very story pivotal part in the story, for lack of better terms. And the main character Jude says, "It's not a matter of whether you can or can't. It's a matter of whether you do or don't." It's sort of like, I can go into the deepness of that line, but it's basically implying that you hold yourself back by saying you can't and all this and that, and it's like you really got to pump yourself up to do the actions you know you can do. It's funny, he says this line when he's punching another character in the face. It's actually quite funny, but he's funny. He's decking another character in the face while saying it, because they're at the lowest point in the story, and Jude just wants to get the job done. That's why I love him. He's riled up. He wants to get the job done. Enough. He's had enough. He's like, all right,
and
chaps.
the other character's still violating him.
Yeah.
Do it, damn it.
Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, that shows power within. Power within is the thing I take away from JRPG growth too. No, excuse me. Power within is the big thing. And again, for someone me, I have an obvious weakness right in front of me. I name myself after it. I have a weight problem. I've always had ever since I was extremely young. I don't let it slow me down. I don't let it make me less of a person, and I don't let it get in the way of my life. It's not a matter of whether I can or can't. It's whether I do or don't.
Yes.
And that's the whole thing. Everyone has weaknesses. I have an obvious one that I even name myself after, but you don't let it slow you down. You do absolutely the best you can to live your best life doing so. And that's what JRPG growth taught me. Yes. That's the most important part.
Yep.
Whew.
All right.
The other parts of it, I think, now going on to the more lighter tones of JRPGs, I think because my parents met through acting, so being artistic and acting on camera, imagine that, has always been in my blood. And I think, and ever since my first story, when I recognized the main actor from Tales of Symphonia being Robin from Teen Titans, I've always had a love of voice acting, and especially English voice acting, which is why the ever so funny argument of dub versus sub in in our community comes up with me defending dubs. I like the acting part of JRPGs, especially when they're well presented. Now, of course, not all old JRPGs have voice acting, but I like it when a JRPG does with our newer technology and budget. Tales of Symphonia was the first one that really brought that out of me. I'm like, oh, Lloyd, Robin from Teen Titans is Lloyd, nice. And then I get into other dubbed acting. I watch more dubbed anime, and I just enjoy the Americanized acting. And then that starts the whole big dub versus sub debacle. That's still rolling today over the entire internet.
Get out.
But yes, I like the more artsy parts of JRPGs also. That's why it's just a phenomenal genre of video game.
Mm-hmm.
And that pretty much wraps up the long and short of it, how they shape me as a person, growth and all that. Growth and artistic wise.
Yep. All right. So I will go and talk about my own take on this whole thing. So how have RPGs influenced me? I'll tell you. So the fact that these games have all of these characters who have their own different personalities, and they have different settings depending on the type of game, different scenarios, and the journey of it, of when they actually go on whatever adventure or settling a conflict or having to fight against the evil threat that is going to destroy or conquer the world and all that stuff. But
or sometimes just trying to open a shop.
Exactly.
A shop.
Or though I personally hope one day we'll get an RPG where the whole conflict starts just by someone spilling a cup of coffee on somebody. But if that exists, please tell me. Anyway, but anyway, my thing is this. For me, it has shaped me to learn more about different characters in a different game, because it's proven to me that not all characters are one-dimensional. They have some characters are either have certain shades of gray put into them. You actually see that they may have some heroic standards or heroic ambitions, but at the same time, maybe they might have some other things. They have some selfish goals, some personal stuff that they have to take care of. Like, for example, if they have a family member who's sick that they want to help out, or or maybe they just want to go on an adventure for the money. Maybe they just want to do it for the money. Maybe. But, and I'll tell you this. For me, what I've learned over the years is that, and of course, I agree with everything that Shad, Mike, and Zykrul have said. But also...
You called me Mike.
Sorry, Matt. Sorry.
It's okay.
Whoops.
Yes, Shad. You called him Mike.
Whoops. Okay. Anyway, whoops. Okay. Matt. I meant Matt.
It's okay.
Anyway. Okay. So, I'll say this much. Okay. So, what I've learned is that I've learned just to go with the flow and how my life actually is, and just see exactly what happens. You never know. I've learned so many different life lessons through RPGs, just like I have through real life. But the main lesson that stuck with me is to just have fun being yourself, and being myself is definitely something that makes me happy. And I'll forever be grateful just going through and just getting into a new adventure, but also at the same time just playing different games in any RPG series, and I still have a lot of ways to go. I still have a lot more to do, because with the namesake of my main series, Backlog Fantasy, backlogs never end, and that's the thing. This journey is not over. It's not over until life says it's over. So until then, I'm gonna keep on playing RPGs.
Yep.
Word.
Yeah.
Long time I'm alive.
Anyway, so now that that's done, Shad, where can we find you?
You can find me at my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/ShadJV. Also, I am on Twitter, Shad_JV.
Yep.
So, yeah, sure you can find me.
All right. And what about you, Matt?
Alrighty, well, I am a lay streamer also. You can find me. Oh, by the way, Pete, I want to do the link for my YouTube. I technically got it wrong. It was my choice. But you can find me, of course. I am lay streamer. You can find me on the good old Twitch when Pete gives me the nice shout out there. And while you can find me on good old Twitter, I'll just nicely put in my YouTube right here. And while I also do that too.
All right. And Zykrul.
So you can find me on those two platforms.
Yep.
Along with others, of course.
And Zykrul, where can we find you?
Right now, that's Twitter, same handle, Zykrul, and it's the same handle as you can see here on Twitch, because eventually I do want to stream. I'll definitely announce that when that comes to be.
Yeah.
But those are the main two that I use.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, that about does it for tonight's episode of Sharing with Shellshock, where we end up having a big discussion on RPGs. It's probably the second longest episode so far, but it's a pretty good one. But again, Shad, Matt, and Zykrul, thank you all so much for all this, for joining in on this discussion.
Yeah, sure.
Of course, homie, of course.
Love to do this again.
Yep.
Whenever you need me for another topic.
Oh, I'll definitely have you guys on again real soon.
Anime girls.
Yeah.
No, I think I have maybe if I have an idea for Matt, if we do a candy discussion, because I still want to do talking about the whole Twix versus Kit Kat thing.
Oh, the Twix versus Kit Kat.
Boy.
What a war.
If we do a candy discussion, we'll definitely go in depth on the whole storyline, how it started and everything.
Kit Kat.
Yeah.
Green tea.
But yeah, overall.
No, yeah.
But overall, that's it. Again, to everyone in chat, and thank you all so much for coming through to watch. This has been Sharing with Shellshock, and hope you all have a good one. Bye.
Peace.